Sarah Chen had spent 3 years mapping the mineral veins of asteroid colony Delta 7 when she first encountered the Calaxians. The crystalline aliens appeared without warning, their prismatic ships refracting starlight across the asteroid's dusty surface. As the colony's lead mining engineer, Sarah was more interested in the composition of their vessels than any potential threat they might pose. After all, any species capable of interstellar travel had probably evolved beyond petty warfare, right? She would later reflect on that assumption with considerable amusement while lying in a heap at the bottom of mining shaft 12, her left leg bent at an angle that definitely wasn't included in the original human design specifications. The accident itself was embarrassingly mundane. She'd been showing the Calaxian delegation through their newest excavation site, explaining human mining techniques to beings who looked like sentient geodes had a baby with a supercomputer. Their faceted bodies sparkled with internal light as they processed information through crystalline matrices that served as both brain and body. Our precision drilling techniques allow us to extract ore with minimal waste, Sarah explained, trying not to stare at the way her visitors' thoughts literally sparkled through their translucent forms. We can navigate around fault lines and... She never finished that sentence because she was too busy discovering that even in 0.3 gravity, a 30-foot drop still hurt like hell. The Calaxian first observer, who had introduced himself as Facet Prime Sigma, but whom Sarah mentally nicknamed Sparkles, emitted a harmonic screech that probably shattered several wine glasses back on Earth. Engineer Chen has experienced catastrophic structural failure. Emergency protocols must be initiated. Sarah, who had been in the process of doing a mental inventory of which parts of her still worked, tried to wave reassuringly with her right arm. I'm fine. Well, mostly fine. The leg's definitely broken, but it's not that bad. She attempted to sit up and immediately regretted every life choice that had led to this moment. Okay, correction. It's pretty bad, but nothing our medical team can't fix. The harmonics emanating from the Calaxian delegation shifted to a frequency that made Sarah's teeth itch. You speak of severe structural damage with casualness. Sparkle's crystalline surface flickered with patterns that Sarah's translator interpreted as extreme confusion. Your primary locomotion support has been compromised. Yeah, that's one way to put it, Sarah grimaced, looking at her definitely not supposed to bend that way leg. Though I prefer, I zigged when I should have zagged. Look, could one of you contact medical? The comm unit in my helmet got knocked out in the fall. The junior Calaxian observer, Crystal Beta Tau, mentally dubbed Glitter by Sarah, was already transmitting on frequencies that made Sarah's fillings resonate. Priority alert. Human biological unit requires emergency reconstruction. Catastrophic failure of support framework detected. Sarah was starting to wonder if perhaps there was some cultural context she was missing here. The Calaxians seemed far more distressed about her injury than she was, and she was the one with the broken leg. It's really not that serious, she tried to explain as Colony Medical's response team arrived. Humans break bones all the time. They heal. She might as well have announced that humans could spontaneously turn into supernovas. The crystalline aliens vibrated at frequencies that threatened to shake apart the mining equipment. They heal. Sparkle's translation matrix seemed to be struggling with the concept. You can repair severe structural damage. Well, yeah, Sarah said, wincing as the medical team began stabilizing her leg. The bone knits itself back together. Usually takes about 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the break. Though I'm guessing with modern medical tech, they might speed that up a bit. The Calaxian delegation's internal light displays were performing what looked like a rave party. Your species can regenerate damaged support structures autonomously. Glitter's translation was becoming increasingly unstable, without external reconstruction assistance. Pretty much, Sarah replied, then immediately regretted it as the aliens began transmitting what she could only assume were panic signals. She was starting to suspect that perhaps the Calaxians, being crystalline life forms, had a very different relationship with structural damage than squishy organics like humans. Dr. Emily Martinez, the colony's chief medical officer, arrived just in time to hear Sarah cheerfully explaining human bone healing to the increasingly agitated aliens. "Chen, I swear, only you could turn a simple compound fracture into a first contact incident," she sighed, preparing a pain medication injector. "In my defense," Sarah began, then paused as the medication hit her system. "Wow, that's some good stuff. Hey Sparkles, did you know your thought patterns look like a disco ball when you're freaking out?" The last thing she saw before the drugs fully kicked in was the Calaxian first observer frantically transmitting what her translator rendered as ALERT. Humans possess autonomous repair capabilities, and APPAO NMUMNE to appropriate levels of distress regarding structural failure. Strategic reassessment required. Dr. Martinez, who had seen enough of Sarah's mishaps to be immune to both her patient's inappropriate humor and alien panic, simply continued treating the break while muttering about causing interstellar incidents to the colony's workplace safety guidelines. Within 24 hours of Sarah Chen's accident, Mining Shaft 12 had been transformed into an impromptu alien research station. Calaxian scientists arrived in waves, their crystalline bodies twinkling with such intense academic excitement that the colony's lighting systems kept detecting phantom power surges. Sarah, confined to the medical bay with her newly set and casted leg, found herself the unwitting star of what she could only describe as the galaxy's most bizarre documentary. Every time Dr. Martinez changed her bandages or checked her vitals, at least 3 Calaxian observers would record the process while emitting frequencies that made the medical equipment malfunction. "I don't understand," Crystal Gamma Phi, whom Sarah had nicknamed Prism, announced during one such session. "You encase the damaged structure in a hardened shell, yet provide no energy matrix for reconstruction. It's called a cast," Dr. Martinez explained with remarkable patience, considering this was the 14th time she'd gone through this explanation. "The bone heals itself. The cast just keeps everything aligned properly." The Calaxian scientific team's internal lights flickered in what Sarah had learned to recognize as their version of academic distress. But how does the structural repair interface know what pattern to follow? Prism's translation matrix was struggling with basic medical concepts. Where are the reconstruction blueprints stored? Sarah, floating comfortably on pain medication, decided to help. "Oh, our bodies just kind of know what to do. DNA and stuff, you know." She wiggled her toes, which were sticking out of the cast. "See, still works. Well, the parts that aren't broken, anyway." The observation team's crystalline surfaces nearly cracked from the intensity of their data transmission. The human biological unit maintains partial function despite catastrophic damage. One junior researcher's voice reached frequencies that threatened to shatter the windows. Their operational redundancy is unprecedented. Dr. Martinez pinched the bridge of her nose. "Sarah, please stop helping. The last time you tried to explain human healing to them, they submitted a paper to their science council suggesting we might be some form of organic quantum computer." "Really?" Sarah grinned. "That's actually pretty cool. Hey, should we tell them about how bones sometimes grow back stronger where they break?" The medical bay's monitoring equipment actually did shatter this time, overwhelmed by the electromagnetic frequencies of multiple Calaxian mines simultaneously short-circuiting. Facet Prime Sigma, who had appointed himself lead researcher of what he called the human structural integrity paradox, began emitting patterns that the translator rendered as mathematical equations with question marks. They not only repair, Sparkles transmitted to his increasingly agitated colleagues, they improve upon the original design specifications. The implications are concerning. The situation wasn't helped by the fact that the human medical staff treated Sarah's condition with what the Calaxians considered to be criminally casual professionalism. When Dr. Martinez discussed Sarah's recovery timeline, The aliens were horrified by the concept of weight-bearing exercise. You intend to subject the damaged structure to deliberate stress. Glitter's crystalline surface had developed a nervous tic that made him look like a disco ball having a seizure. While it is still undergoing autonomous reconstruction. Well, yeah, Sarah shrugged, then immediately regretted the movement as it jostled her leg. That's how you build strength back up. Though honestly, I'm more worried about all the paperwork I'm going to have to fill out. Colony safety is going to have a field day with this one. The collection researchers huddled together, their internal lights pulsing in what Sarah imagined was their version of furious whispering. Their subsequent report to the Calaxian High Council contained several notations that the translation matrix simply rendered as. Meanwhile, rumors began spreading through the Calaxian fleet orbiting Delta 7. Their crystalline communication networks buzzed with increasingly wild theories about human biological capabilities. I heard they can replace damaged components at will, one navigator transmitted to their squadron. The human engineer spoke of previous reconstructions as if discussing routine maintenance. The Calaxian medical community was particularly disturbed by human pain management techniques. When Sarah complained about the hospital food and joked that she was dying for a real coffee, only to be seen the next day fully alert and energized after Dr. Martinez brought her some contraband espresso. 3 Calaxian physiologists had to be escorted out of the observation area for emergency recalibration. They can temporarily deactivate without losing operational capacity, the resulting report claimed, and they reactivate with enhanced functionality through the ritual consumption of bitter stimulant compounds. Sarah's attempts to explain normal human healing processes only made things worse. When she mentioned that she'd probably be back at work in a few weeks, the Calaxian Science Council convened an emergency session to discuss what they termed human temporal manipulation of biological reconstruction. Perhaps, one senior researcher suggested, their crystalline form flickering with academic terror. They exist in a quantum superposition of damaged and repaired states and can collapse the probability wave at will. Dr. Martinez, reviewing the latest batch of Calaxian observation reports, couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. Chen, somehow you've convinced an entire alien species that humans are some kind of self-repairing organic supercomputers with quantum healing capabilities. In my defense, Sarah replied, adjusting her position in the medical bay bed, I'm pretty sure some of this is the pain meds talking. Did you know that if you look at the Calaxians from just the right angle, their thought patterns make shapes like one of those old Windows screensavers? The Calaxian observer who overheard this comment immediately filed a report, suggesting that humans possessed previously unknown perceptual abilities that allowed them to directly observe quantum information processing. The report was marked maximum priority and forwarded directly to the Calaxian High Command, where it would soon contribute to what would become known as the Great Misunderstanding. By the 3rd week of what colonial administrators were now calling the leg incident, Sarah Chen's recovery had become an interstellar diplomatic crisis. The Calaxian High Command had reassigned their entire xenobiology division to study what they termed human biological superiority, and their military strategists were working overtime trying to assess the strategic implications of a species that could reconfigure their structural matrix at will. The situation wasn't helped by the fact that the human colonists, having caught on to the Calaxians' misunderstandings, had started deliberately making things worse. "Hey, Sarah," called out mining technician James Rodriguez as he passed by her medical bay window. "Don't forget about your weekly organ rotation schedule. Tuesday's spleen day." 3 Calaxian observers immediately transmitted emergency updates to their fleet. Confirmed. Humans regularly replace internal components as preventative maintenance measure. Sarah, who had progressed to sitting up and doing basic physical therapy exercises, couldn't help but play along. "Thanks for the reminder. Though I might have to reschedule. Dr. Martin says my bone density is increasing faster than expected." The resulting electromagnetic pulse from the Calaxian researchers' collective panic temporarily disabled half the colony's communications array. Their latest report to High Command included a section titled Human Structural Enhancement Capabilities, a Growing Threat, complete with helpful diagrams showing exponential growth curves that made absolutely no scientific sense. Even Dr. Martinez, despite her initial attempts to maintain professional decorum, had started enjoying the chaos. When a Calaxian medical observer asked about human healing mechanisms, she casually mentioned cellular mitosis while checking Sarah's cast. "You mean to tell us Sparkle's crystalline surface was practically strobing with agitation, that your damaged structures create perfect copies of themselves at a microscopic level?" "Well, that's a simplified explanation. But essentially, yes," Dr. Martins replied, fighting to keep a straight face. "Though the really interesting part is how the cells know when to stop duplicating." The Calaxian Science Council's emergency session lasted 3 days after that revelation. Their conclusions, heavily redacted and marked as maximum security clearance required, suggested that humans might be composed of self-replicating nanomachines disguised as organic matter. Meanwhile, in high orbit above Delta 7, the Calaxian military was having an existential crisis. Admiral Crystal Omega Prime, commander of the 7th Crystalline Fleet, reviewed the latest intelligence reports with growing alarm. "Let me ensure I understand this correctly." The admiral's facets pulsed with command authority. "A human engineering unit sustained catastrophic structural damage, and not only continued to function, but appears to be improving upon their original specifications." "Correct, Admiral." Sparkles projected his observations onto the command center's main display. "Furthermore, they appear to view this process as routine. The human Chen has mentioned previous reconstruction events with concerning casualness. The Admiral's surface developed stress patterns that would have made a geologist weep with joy. And their medical protocols, primitive yet terrifyingly effective." Glitter chimed in, their crystalline matrix still showing signs of the nervous tic they'd developed while observing human recovery techniques. They encased damaged components in restrictive shells, channel electrical impulses through their neural networks for accelerated healing, and deliberately stress recovering structures to increase durability. Most disturbing of all, Prism added, their academic frequencies hitting notes that made the ship's crystal hull resonate. They appear to be able to upgrade their biological components through what they term exercise. "We've observed the human Chen engaging in deliberate stress testing of undamaged structures to enhance their capabilities." Back in the colony's medical bay, Sarah was demonstrating range of motion exercises to a horrified audience of Calaxian observers. "See, the joint's already getting more flexible. Pretty soon, I'll be back to normal." Normal. One junior researcher's translation matrix actually glitched. "You mean this level of regenerative capability is standard for your species?" "Oh sure," Sarah replied, not realizing she was about to cause an interstellar incident. "Humans are pretty good at bouncing back from injuries. My cousin once had a titanium plate put in his skull after an accident. He says it actually made his head stronger." The Calaxian observation team's collective crystalline structure vibrated at frequencies that registered on seismographs 3 asteroids over. They integrate artificial components into their biological matrix. Voluntarily. Dr. Martinez, who had long since given up trying to prevent escalation of the misunderstandings, decided to add fuel to the fire. "Would you like to see some X-rays of how the bone is knitting together? The calcification process is quite fascinating." The resulting electromagnetic pulse from the Calaxians' collective shock knocked out power to the entire medical wing. Their report to High Command marked ultimate priority. Hence, threatening implications contained the following conclusions. Humans possess autonomous repair capabilities that exceed known biological limitations. They can integrate artificial components into their structure at will. They deliberately damage themselves to trigger enhancement protocols. They view catastrophic structural failure as a path to improvement. Their entire species may be composed of self-evolving organic technology. Admiral Crystal Omega Prime's response was immediate and decisive. Initiate Strategic Protocol Omega-7. All fleet elements are to maintain maximum safe distance from human installations. Under no circumstances are we to risk damaging their structural integrity. It may only make them stronger. As the Calaxian fleet began its careful withdrawal to what they deemed safe observation distance, Sarah was focused on mastering the use of crutches. "Hey, Doc," she called out to Martinez. "Why do the aliens scatter every time I practice walking? You'd think they'd never seen someone using mobility aids before. Probably because they've classified your crutches as tactical mobility enhancement devices and your physical therapy as combat enhancement protocols," Dr. Martins replied, showing Sarah the latest intercepted Calaxian intelligence report. Apparently, they're now convinced the humans are some kind of self-upgrading organic weapon system. Sarah blinked at the report, then grinned. "Well, that's ridiculous. Though I have to admit, my arms are getting pretty strong from using these crutches." The Calaxian observer who overheard this comment immediately transmitted an emergency update. ALERT. Human confirms tactical enhancement effects of mobility assistance devices. Recommend immediate revision of threat assessment protocols. 6 weeks into what the Calaxian military now classified as the human resilience crisis, Sarah Chen was cleared to begin intensive physical therapy. The colony's rehabilitation center had been retrofitted with enough alien monitoring equipment to make it look like a cross between a gym and a deep space observatory. The Calaxian High Command had converted their flagship into a dedicated observation platform, positioning it in high orbit to monitor what they termed human enhancement protocols. Admiral Crystal Omega Prime personally oversaw the operation, their crystalline form developing new stress fractures every time Sarah performed a rehabilitation exercise. Beginning Human Combat Enhancement Ritual, Session 23. Sparkles transmitted as Sarah entered the rehab center. Subject Chen appears to be utilizing previous damage as a catalyst for improved functionality. The real panic started when Sarah's physical therapist, Lisa Wong, brought out the resistance bands. "These elastic bands will help rebuild muscle strength," Lisa explained to Sarah, deliberately ignoring the forest of crystalline recording devices surrounding them. "We'll start with light resistance and gradually increase as you get stronger." The Calaxian observer's internal lights strobed in terror. They harness quantum tensile forces for biological enhancement. Prism's transmission was so high-pitched it made dogs bark 3 levels down. The human deliberately subjects themselves to dimensional stress. Sarah, who had long since stopped trying to correct alien misconceptions, cheerfully began her exercises. "You know," she commented between sets, "I think my leg might end up stronger than it was before the break." Admiral Crystal Omega Prime's bridge crew watched in horror as their commander's surface developed new crystalline stress patterns. They weaponized their own injuries, the Admiral transmitted to High Command. Every attempt to impair their functionality results in systematic improvement. The situation reached new levels of absurdity when Lisa introduced electrical muscle stimulation therapy. The sight of Sarah calmly allowing small electrical currents to be passed through her healing leg caused a mass panic in the Calaxian fleet. They channel raw energy directly into their biological matrix. Glitter's report reached frequencies that threatened to shatter their own crystalline form. Previous assumptions about human power consumption were catastrophically incorrect. Dr. Martinez, reviewing the latest batch of alien intelligence reports, couldn't stop laughing. According to this, they've classified your therapy ball as a gravitational manipulation device and your ankle weights as localized mass enhancement technology. Sarah, in the middle of a set of carefully controlled leg lifts, grinned. "Wait until they see the hydrotherapy pool. Want to bet they'll think it's some kind of molecular reconstruction chamber." She wasn't far off. When Sarah had her first water therapy session, the Calaxian Science Council convened an emergency meeting to discuss what they termed human phase state manipulation capabilities. Their resulting report suggested that humans might be able to temporarily convert their biological structure into a liquid state for enhanced healing. The breaking point came during what should have been a routine balance exercise. Sarah, standing carefully on her healing leg, managed to maintain her position for a full minute. The Calaxian observation team's collective reaction nearly crashed their entire communication network. Priority alert. Sparkles transmitted, their crystalline surface practically disco dancing with panic. Human Chen has achieved full structural stability in less than 7 planetary rotations. Previous recovery time estimates require immediate revision. Lisa, checking Sarah's form, made the mistake of saying, "Excellent progress. You're healing faster than expected." The resulting electromagnetic pulse from the Calaxian observers' collective horror knocked out power to half the colony. Their emergency transmission to High Command included phrases like accelerated evolution and exponential enhancement curve. Admiral Crystal Omega Prime, watching the rehabilitation sessions with growing alarm, finally reached a breaking point during Sarah's cardiovascular training. They deliberately elevate their internal temperature and increase molecular vibration rates, the Admiral transmitted to their increasingly terrified staff. Every recovery protocol appears designed to exceed previous biological limitations. The Calaxian military strategists were working overtime, trying to calculate the implications. Their latest analysis, marked ISTN TUD IAL 380 ASACSSMENT, suggested that human recovery techniques might represent a form of controlled evolution. Consider the evidence, one senior analyst transmitted. They encase damaged components in protective shells, channel energy directly into their biological matrix, manipulate gravitational forces for enhancement, and deliberately stress healing structures to exceed original specifications. These aren't medical procedures. They're upgrade protocols. Meanwhile, Sarah was celebrating a small victory. "Hey, I can bend my knee past 90 degrees now," she announced cheerfully. 3 Calaxian cruisers immediately broke orbit, their crews refusing to remain in the same star system as a being that could reconfigure joint angles at will. The observation team's report on this development included several diagrams that appeared to be attempting to calculate the mathematical possibilities of human flexibility. Most of them ended in question marks or expressions of existential dread. Dr. Martinez, who had started keeping a collection of the most entertaining alien intelligence reports, shared her latest favorite with Sarah. According to this, they think our physical therapy department is actually a human enhancement facility where we deliberately damage and rebuild ourselves to achieve superior capabilities. Well, they're not entirely wrong, Sarah replied, working on her ankle rotations. Though I have to admit, I didn't expect my broken leg to cause an interstellar panic about human biological capabilities. The best part, Dr. Martinez added, scanning through more reports, is that they've started theorizing about why we named it physical therapy. They think the therapy part implies we're counseling your body into becoming stronger. The Calaxian observer who overheard this exchange immediately filed a report suggesting that humans possessed previously unknown abilities to directly communicate with their cellular structure. The report was marked Reality Altering Implications and forwarded to every major Calaxian scientific institution. 8 weeks after what would become known as the incident that broke Calaxian physics, Sarah Chen walked into her final medical checkup without assistance. Her stride was almost back to normal, though she still had a slight limp that Dr. Martinez assured her would fade with time. The Calaxian observation team, which had dwindled from a full scientific delegation to a handful of particularly brave, or possibly traumatized, researchers, recorded her entrance with their usual mix of terror and fascination. Complete structural restoration achieved. Sparkles transmitted, their crystalline surface showing signs of permanent stress patterns from 2 months of continuous human observation. Subject Chen appears to have exceeded original design parameters. The limp is temporary, Sarah mentioned casually, not realizing she was about to trigger an interstellar panic. Another few weeks of exercises, and I'll be good as new. Maybe better, actually. I've been working on my overall strength and flexibility during recovery. Admiral Crystal Omega Prime, watching the transmission from the flagship's command center, finally reached their breaking point. The Admiral's surface developed so many stress patterns that they briefly resembled a kaleidoscope having an existential crisis. This can no longer be ignored, the Admiral transmitted to the Calaxian High Council. The humans don't just repair damage. They use it as a catalyst for systematic improvement. Every attempt to understand their capabilities reveals new layers of biological impossibility. The High Council's emergency session lasted 3 days, during which they reviewed all the evidence collected during Sarah's recovery. Their conclusions, marked Paradigm CFTNG AMPLICATIONs, included the following observations. Humans can survive catastrophic structural damage while maintaining operational awareness. They possess autonomous repair capabilities that defy known biological limits. Their recovery protocols appear designed to exceed original specifications. They integrate technology, energy manipulation, and gravitational forces into their enhancement processes. They treat severe damage as an opportunity for improvement. Most terrifyingly, they seem to genuinely enjoy the process. The Council's decision was unanimous. Immediate diplomatic withdrawal and the establishment of a scientific observation perimeter at what they deemed a safe evolutionary distance. Sarah, completely unaware that she had just triggered the largest military retreat in Calaxian history, was focused on demonstrating her recovered range of motion to Dr. Martinez. "Look, I can even do this now," she said, performing a simple squat. The remaining Calaxian observers transmitted their final report with such intensity that it temporarily reversed the polarity of the colony's magnetic field. Emergency UPDAT. Human Chen has achieved full mobility restoration and is now implementing advanced gravitational manipulation protocols. Recommend immediate strategic withdrawal. The exodus began within hours. Calaxian ships broke orbit in perfect crystalline formation, their crews refusing to remain within what they termed human enhancement range. Only Sparkles and a small diplomatic team remained behind to formally present their species' position to the colony administration. The resulting meeting was perhaps the most surreal diplomatic exchange in human history. Colony Administrator Zhang sat in bewilderment as Sparkles, their translation matrix struggling with concepts that challenged their entire understanding of biology, presented the official Calaxian response to humanity's revealed capabilities. In recognition of your species' superior biological engineering and terrifying regenerative potential, Sparkles transmitted, their surface flickering with diplomatic caution. The Calaxian Collective proposes an immediate alliance based on mutual respect and a safe observational distance of not less than 3 star systems. "Let me get this straight," Administrator Zhang said slowly, reviewing the agreement. "You want to establish peaceful relations because one of our engineers broke her leg. The human Chen's demonstration of your species' enhancement protocols has revolutionized our understanding of biological possibilities," Sparkles replied. "We would prefer to be allies rather than risk discovering what other capabilities you might be concealing." Sarah, who had been invited to the meeting as the unwitting catalyst of this diplomatic revolution, couldn't help herself. "Wait until they find out about how humans can deliberately modify their bodies through something we call working out," she whispered to Dr. Martinez. Unfortunately, her whisper wasn't quiet enough. Sparkle's crystalline surface developed several new stress fractures as their translation matrix processed this information. The resulting diplomatic addendum included a clause requiring humans to provide warning before initiating any voluntary biological enhancement protocols in the vicinity of Calaxian observers. In the years that followed, the story of how Sarah Chen's broken leg prevented an interstellar conflict became required reading at both human and Calaxian diplomatic academies. The Calaxians, despite extensive scientific observation, never quite stopped believing that humans were some form of self-modifying organic superweapons. They did, however, prove to be excellent allies, particularly in situations requiring structural engineering expertise. Sarah herself became something of a legend in both human and Calaxian space. The Calaxians gave her the title, "She who transcends structural limitations," though something was definitely lost in translation. She was eventually appointed as humanity's chief diplomatic liaison to the Calaxian Collective, a position she accepted with her usual good humor. "You know what's really funny?" she told Dr. Martins during a reunion years later. "I actually hate exercise. Those physical therapy sessions were torture." "Don't let the Calaxians hear you say that," Martins replied with a grin. "They'll probably think you were undergoing voluntary pain endurance training." The final addition to the Calaxian Encyclopedia of Human Biology simply read, "Warning: all previous assumptions about human biological limitations should be considered optimistic underestimates. Approach with appropriate awe and sufficient distance." As for mining Shaft 12, where it all began, the Calaxians declared it a site of evolutionary significance and insisted on installing a commemorative crystal that somehow managed to look simultaneously terrified and impressed. Sarah made sure they included her favorite quote in the inscription: "Never underestimate humanity's ability to turn a simple accident into an interstellar incident." The crystal, much like the story it commemorated, continued to puzzle and alarm Calaxian visitors for generations to come.